Hey Gravity family, it's Ilya, interim CFO, and in today's Gravity video, I'm talking about our compliance practices. When you register for Gravity, you'll be asked to upload your ID document and take a selfie to run you through identity verification. This activates your Gravity account. Our compliance team may at some point ask you for information and documentation to prove the source of your funds or bitcoins, your address, or your employment. These are routine requests that help us comply with regulatory bodies. By operating within the legal framework for financial businesses, we're making sure we not only meet the requirements of KYC and AML practices, but we're also protecting Gravity for the long term, in turn offering you assurance of the safety and security of all of our customer funds, including yours. And that's it. Until next time.
Okay, hello and welcome everybody to another episode of the Bitstocks podcast. And today we have a savior, a light in shining armor. We had an emergency pullout because we couldn't get timing to sync up with our guest. And we put out a post on our Twitter requesting who we should have come down and have a chat with us on the podcast. And Robin, your name came through very strong, brother, very strong. And it's great because this is an opportunity where I get a chance to speak to someone based on what the community has requested. So Robin Kohze, CEO and founder of Vaionex, my bro, welcome to the Bitstocks podcast. How are you?
Thanks, Michael, for having me today.
Honestly,
I just woke up actually. So that's why I said it needed to be 15:30 or later, because I usually work half of the night.
Well, to be fair, I've just come in from outside having lunch and it's 22 degrees, which is very rare, right, in London right now. And I was just having lunch outside in the sun with my daughter, a little picnic. So I've got like sun eyes, the whole lot. So we're both maybe a little bit tired so we can wake each other up.
But it's a sign of getting back into normality. Now you see the sun, you see the people get out again.
I hope so.
And to that topic, I also hope that in terms of BSV space, we get back into normality.
So where in the world are you?
I'm in Cambridge.
Okay, so you're actually in the UK?
I could have come, but it was a bit short time.
It was very short notice. So just give me a bit of an intro to yourself. Robin, so how did you even come to Cambridge? Obviously now you're working in SV space. Just give me a bit of a background story. Who are you?
Well, I'm Robin from Paderborn, originally Germany, then went to the Netherlands to study, partially to escape having good grades. You didn't need to have any good grades in the Netherlands. The only thing that you needed to do was passing the first year.
Wow, okay.
And the first year was failed by 60-70%, so it's a very ridiculously hard system in the first year. And once you made it, you're one of the selected few. And well, from there I progressed into Google's Summer of Code, the Google Scholarships twice. I was twice mentor of Google's Summer of Code for other projects.
Okay.
Ran all kinds of public repositories, including space. Data science, went much into machine learning around 2011, 2012. So it was a bit the path of redemption from saying, what, I'm not good enough to join that university in Germany. And now I'm leading the data science AI field. And then I started my entrepreneurial path, so to say. I started with a video animation company because I thought it's ridiculous how we learn biochemistry those days. That was my undergrad. We have to learn by reading terms. Like when you hear the term protease, it doesn't mean anything to you until you put an image to it. So why not learn it from the image directly? Because you have this hyper complex system. Like imagine you had 10,000 people running around in London doing certain things differently today than they did yesterday. Putting that in words is ridiculously hard. Everyone interprets something else from it. But why not just showing what it is, and then you will instantly get it. That was my first company. Then started together in the molecular dynamics, that is simulating the cell itself and all the interactions, because then my professor said, well, when you can visualize things already, why not also really model everything out? And from that, I went into the more entrepreneurial scheme and saying, so all I did with machine learning, data science, it's kind of a repetitive pattern, and I'm getting bored of it. And everyone else is doing it, repeats the same pattern. So why not create a marketplace for code patterns where everyone can sell a certain part of the whole pipeline, therefore save everyone months and months of time on figuring those patterns out to actually focus on the intellectual aspects of interpreting what you got and not so much on getting there, because there's nothing intellectual in it.
Yeah, the context of what it is that you're evaluating.
Yeah.
Now just take me to how Bitcoin's different, right? Or why Bitcoin is different. Is Bitcoin different? And how did Bitcoin, I guess, trigger you intellectually and as an entrepreneur? Because up until now, you've mentioned a variety of different startups that you've been involved in. And just looking at Vaionex as well, just the website and kind of the vibe and gist that I get as to what you're trying to execute, which I'd love to go into more detail on, it's quite clear that you're bringing all of that history with you, and now you're going to deliver it in some SV flavor.
So my original Bitcoin story was I was creating this marketplace for codes in the machine learning space. And then I realized when you create a market space, you need to get certain marketplace models from either Stripe or from paper.
Okay.
And for doing that, you first need to be a US company. So Vaionex was early on set up as a US company to provide that. And then I realized even if I'm doing that, it's completely unfeasible to do a $4 payment. And if you cannot go that low, you basically kill the whole idea already, let alone from the whole tax perspective of how do I actually pay sales taxes for every single person who buys something for $3 if I'm not a big company. If I'm a startup, then most of startups will say, okay, maybe there is sales tax or maybe not, but I'm not paying it.
Yeah.
And then they wait till someone comes at them. But I kind of had the idea that's the problem that millions of startups face.
Yeah, proactive instead of reactive.
Isn't that something that blockchain could potentially solve if we code it into a smart contract that all sales taxes, like when something is classified as sales tax, then you just add a parameter of country and then it's directly flowing to that country. So you get this very efficient system to it. And then I explored the space first of what is there, the Bitcoin, Ethereum, a few smaller ones. It's easy to get misled what the real quality is in the space.
Did you get misled? Did you get led astray? Or was it quite obvious that you held onto the thread that eventually led to Bitcoin SV? So how did you navigate your way?
So my early experience was, so I read all of the projects, apps that were in the space, and I saw there was this German project IOTA, and it took like
I remember. Yeah.
It took around 1 week till they banned me from the Slack because I asked all the critical questions. And later they even wanted to start a lawsuit against me and my Slack, who all agreed on that it's complete vaporware and that there's no there's no game theoretical incentive model behind it, so there's no security behind it either. It's this big, trust me, please, we know what we do. But As a scientist, just like now I'm half entrepreneur, half scientist, but I'm always like, okay, you can make things up and say, trust me, and whatever you do. But if you cannot explain it to me easily, then maybe you don't understand what you're doing anyways. Maybe I shouldn't trust you then. Then I quickly went further to, Bitcoin Cash was the first big support that I gave in this space.
Yeah.
Mainly because I thought, okay, we can go two paths with it. We can go as Bitcoin as gold, basically, as a store of value, which does not exist when you really go into the fundamentals of what a store of value would mean, actually. Or there is a world where you can say we have actually a cash layer on top of the digital layer of the current internet, and thereby start all those millions of startups that faced all the problems that I'm facing with mine. And with Bitcoin Cash, we can also use the Bitcoin script to implement such tax layers to it and handle all the sales taxes. And then I could be instantly free and come up with whatever I want and just do it instead of spending all the time creating, US companies. Most people are not living in the US. And then handling all the regulatory aspects.
So how do you see then your background around machine learning and Bitcoin as a technical showcase and something that could influence machine learning or not influence machine learning? How do you see that relationship evolving, or do you see it evolving? Is there a place there where Bitcoin potentially even takes the concept of AI further?
So when I started with the Raspberry ideas, that was already years back. It wasn't called Raspberry, it was something else. There we analyzed millions of papers and used machine learning to connect the papers for knowledge and to figure out where do we have in millions of papers some gaps in knowledge, maybe some gaps in reasoning. Maybe we're also always using the same reasoning for things.
Sorry, just to break that down, unpack that a bit. When you say you analyze millions of papers using what methodology?
So that's the word-to-vec methodology, that you say if we have 10 words and one of the words is, for example, king, the other one is queen, then you can replace those words with each other, right? And the sentences would still make sense, the same way you can replace man and woman with each other, and it still makes sense. Now you can even replace man with king, and it would still make sense, but a little bit less than it did before if you use the same words. So now you can create a 1,000-dimensional parameter space and say, we have now 4 points, king, queen, and then man, woman. And what turns out that the distance between king and queen is the same as man and woman, just shifted in the parameter space. So you can say something about the meaning of words in a sentence. And now you can apply that to whole research articles of saying, why not figure out the meaning of certain maybe pathways or the meaning of certain proteins? Are they maybe always used in a certain way because they always indicate something around cancer, maybe always something around something else? The idea is what if they always come up with different words for the same pathways and they don't realize it yet because they looked with different machines at the same problem? I would find that problem. But then I realized machine learning is great, but it's not quite there yet. So now we have GPT-3 that might actually be able to do that problem, but it might be a highly extensive task to do. But there is something way more efficient, and that is using human brains to actually read those papers, connect papers, say what the content is. But humans don't do it because they are bored. They want to get an incentive. So either it's a social incentive by, let's say Wikipedia moderators, they get recognized for being moderators. Or you have maybe a social media system where you have likes and shares. They get maybe that social recognition by your peers. But I wanted to have a system that is actually scalable to the whole world. I said maybe Bitcoin and micropayments are the smarter way to do things than machine learning.
Yeah, I think is really interesting. I want to explore that a little bit more. So having the machine in order to the human in order to provide context to the machine, right? But it's like, old steam trains, and then you had the human being shoveling coal, throwing it into the engine, right? We built this great machine, but you need the human being to funnel the coal into the machine in order for the machine to do what the machine does, right? And I get that. Hyper get the efficiency of doing that. However, that is one human, one machine. So I know what I'm putting in is going to get the result is that I'm desiring, right? But what I find quite interesting with the notion of Bitcoin being a ring, right? That anyone could come pull their seat up to it and funnel coal into the machine, right? But what about format, right? Because it's one machine now, but you've got different mechanisms of funneling, feeding it, right? What about data schemas, data formats?
Well, for those, you of course develop standardized protocols, such as the Raspberry Hive protocol that I presented at the Coingeek Soul. and got the second place. So there my idea was mostly, let's do something radically different that nobody ever came up with. Doesn't need to make any business sense at all. It just needs to be spectacularly different. And there needs to be some aspect of it that could actually work and scale to the whole world. To the machine learning part, so that's again the same that we have in the blockchain space. Many people tell you that something works better than a human can do it. But really rarely it's actually the case. So it's with all those hype topics, when you go really to the ground of it, many things are not as good as they appear to be. So in that sense, the human is not only the one that shovels in the coal, but it's actually that the brain is needed to reach such a quality of model in the end.
Yeah. So bring me up to your present business then. So what's the mission there? What does the business that you operate right now do, and how do you service customers?
So I think the story starts at creating the Metanet Society, where my plan was to support a bit the BSV ecosystem just when it started end 2018. I felt we had a problem with presenting what Bitcoin SV is, and there was a danger of maybe going completely unrecognized, no matter how much the people involved believed in it.
So for people like even myself, I don't even keep hyper abreast with Metanet. What is the Metanet Society for those watching? What's the Metanet Society?
So the Metanet Society is a society completely focused on building Bitcoin SV applications. We didn't call ourselves Blockchain Society because we knew we would get then all the investors in. We wanted to specifically show there is some value in blockchain. And I feel with most of the space, I would still disagree that there's value in blockchain. I would say there's value in speculating on things that I can maybe track on the blockchain, but there's no value in it itself. And there I wanted to make a point that it's actually like databases in the 60s, 70s, where some early pioneers came up with the idea. It made enough sense. But it took a few years till Larry Ellison and Oracle came up and said, wait a minute, we can actually scale that to the whole world if we just normalize it, offer services around it. Then only decades later, we started to get the Web 2.0, where you had actually interactive content with social media presence on the internet, for which you required those databases. So very early websites were more like HTML and some GIFs around that blinked a bit. And suddenly it was super relevant. And now nobody would tell you we don't need a database anymore. And I feel, with BSV and blockchain, we're going the same path. It might be a path of a few years, but the important point I want to make with the Metanet Society is that we can actually build things, and that's what we get as output is now having one of those companies out that is building infrastructure.
But when describing Metanet, so to your average Joe, even someone in the BSV community, right? Metanet is always hovered around as basically a destination point, what we're all incrementally, bit by bit, contributing towards, and then have this new version of what we used to call the internet, right? And we've called it the Metanet. But what does that mean really? Like, what's the experience? Like, what does, say, Sven here, who's amazingly technically minded, like everyone can see the results of Sven's work when they watch the Bitstocks podcast and all of our content. She knows her stuff, and she's been with us for a very long period of time. Definitely knows her stuff. But if I was to ask Sven what Metanet is, she wouldn't know. I wouldn't expect her to know. So to someone like Sven, who's now, say, a power user in terms of devices, but now is going to be utilizing this new variant of the internet, what does someone like Sven expect to have coming her way?
I would at first say the Metanet is not replacing the internet. The Metanet is on top of the internet. When you look at technological process or progress in general, these steps were always smaller and smaller, but since more and more people were involved in those steps, it was still significant for everyone. Like, nothing replaces significance of creating the internet itself. But now on top, we will have a layer where you can incentivize people in, I always call it game theoretical models. What it means is that we create a system where there's a fair transfer of values between you and me.
Yeah.
Either you give me something, I give you something, or I give you something and you pay me something. Ultimately, it's our digital information being shared, but in that case, that digital information contains maybe a coin or token. But what it ultimately means for you is that we extend the internet I introduced with extending the internet by a database to create a social media. Now we extend the internet by, I call it the Metanet. Like the Metanet protocol is slightly different.
Yeah.
But the Metanet itself means suddenly I can have code that natively handles money and tokens and value transmitters.
How do you see NFTs fit in this all that? I mean, what is your position on tokens right now? It's quite a contentious subject matter in the BSV space. How do you see the subject matter of tokens and NFTs?
So I would say both very different topics. NFTs, I saw your cast with Nikki and where you talked about shoes and so on. And then I was thinking, those are NFTs, right? It's just the T misses in the NF, non-fungible. Same with Pokemon cards. People just like to collect things generally. And what is the problem with just transferring that to the digital space? There's nothing morally wrong about that concept in itself. It's more with what you do with it. The moment it becomes an NFT, a digital token, you can always say, give me $1 million and maybe in 2 years I will make you a nice card out of it. But that is the early learning phase where, I mean, it's also the consumers that fall for it in that way. But I can see a NFT generation maybe coming after the summer, also in the BSV space, that actually is backed with value and also with some legal compliance around what intellectual property actually means. Like right now you can say, oh, this NFT represents an intellectual property, but what if I create a second one? Can that first person sue me or not? So we need to kind of lay out a contractual framework around that. So in general, I don't see anything wrong with it. And I think Vaionex will also issue NFTs, but the difference is we will never sell them. We don't believe something of value. Like, think back to the Pokemon era. People were buying maybe those small booster packs back then.
That was me. I was a small booster pack buyer.
And then we were trading them, right? To get...
For me, to be honest, where it really started off was, I don't know, maybe it's before your time, but Pogs. For anyone who's watching, hit me up in the comments if you remember Pogs. Because there was like these round cards, effectively, circular cards, and you used to stack them, and you used to have something called a slammer, right? And then you battle your friends in order to win their Pogs. And it started to get crazy in the playgrounds where kids will have, myself included, pockets stuffed full of these Pogs and your slammers, and you just go around competing with all the other kids. It got to the point where my school at this time, this is primary school, not even secondary school, they banned them. Like Pogs had to be banned from schools across the UK because it just went out of control. And then it moved on to Pokemon cards in my era. But Pogs, definitely. So for the nostalgic lot out there who just had a massive flashback and a wave of slammers and the battles on the playground, hit me up in the comments and let me just know I'm not the only old guy. But sorry, dude.
We in Germany did exactly the same with the World Cup football cards.
Oh, okay.
Playing them. Band 2, always the same story. But ultimately, NFTs, when we look at the whole term, a traceable token is for me an NFT. Like, I can put an NFT to a container, and every time it's reaching a new destination, I can add new information to that NFT. And then it has a record on the blockchain from station to station. So it's whatever you do with it that makes it what it is. You can have an artwork there, or you can have something else. Craig posted yesterday night that you can have NFTs that, to the one owning it, has a higher resolution and image quality than the one that can just preview it from the outside. And then suddenly it's not something you can copy anymore, but it's actually something that you own, and you get something for it. And we will certainly offer services around that too as Vaionex.
So in terms of NFTs platform, so token platforms, who has your heart right now out of all the different platform providers? What's the easiest thing to play around with? And I guess who you may be disappointed in?
Maybe my answer is disappointing to you because I wanted to name the most difficult one at the moment to get in.
Go on.
Because ultimately, we all write frameworks around it, like we as company might do it. We make it easier than any other one. You will not see what's going on behind. But because we make it ourselves a bit more difficult, it will be easier for everyone who uses it in the end. Like if you do a Google search, incredibly complex processes start to happen. But you don't need to know about it. You need to know that it's quick and it shows me right results. And what I would promote is the STAS protocol. STAS.
What protocol?
The STAS protocol.
STAS
okay.
Is
the Israeli security researcher and script developer. And he sold his intellectual property to Tal. And I cannot tell too much about what Tal is doing because we have contracts too. But what the token is ultimately doing is now we have this war maybe between the level 2 protocols where you have kind of a trace and an op return that tells you, okay, there was just something done, someone transacted the token, but it's only the server that stands somewhere that is validating that this transaction was not a double spend and it actually happened. And for me, thinking long-term perspective and also thinking of value perspective, let's say you have a Pokemon card, you don't want to have your Pokemon card vanish in a few years because the company went bankrupt. The same as if I have an exchange and now the startup that created the level 2 protocol says, actually, we are running out of money. And if you want to keep your tokens running, you better pay us money now. And then you create a dependency on those level 2 servers and their companies. And I'm totally disagreeing with that concept.
So you want a full on-chain implementation, right?
Yeah, if it's possible to do it very elegantly on the chain that you never need a second third-party server anymore, then we should definitely do that, especially when the transaction fees are the same. And we have the advantage of integrating those smart contract tokens, the STAS tokens, into Bitcoin script smart contracts. So you have this Turing complete scripter.
So why are people leapfrogging that stage? What's the complication? So basically from what I'm understanding as to what you're saying is, let's say you got 100 people trying to buy one item. How does the system work out who was first in the queue and where you are in the queue, right? So if it's done on chain, there will be a timestamp with it where the chain and the network is the arbiter and that's final, right? If it's not done there, then it's being done on someone's server to work out what is going on, who's the, like, where the server is the arbiter, right? And then trying to work out the routing. So is that an accurate depiction of what you're trying to describe? And if it is, why is that the case?
So now the last 2 years, we worked out how with BSV, the zero confirmation transactions work efficiently, so that you can have those instant transaction back and forth now 1,000 times since we lifted the ancestor limits a bit. And in the end, there's a whole machinery of miners behind it, propagating that information, having millions of dollars spent to create this infrastructure and making sure to comply with every rule, and also have this game theoretical arbitrage running out with orphaning blocks saying, oh, this one was actually rather double spent or something went wrong there, and therefore saying we don't integrate your block in the longest chain now. So we have a billion-dollar industry building around it, securing that a transaction was actually done or not. And now some level 2 miner comes and creates a server for you and says, oh wait a minute, we did something there. It works too. Of course it works too, but will it work at scale? They might argue that since you push your level 2 data to the op return, we can maybe use the miners' integration of those op returns. But ultimately that argument will also not stand when you look at the details of it. So I'd say we almost reinvent the whole system by going level 2, while we don't need to.
Yeah. That is very interesting. And obviously not many people look at it from that intimate, behind the scenes, under the hood, let me check my engine out, see how it's really working standpoint.
And I remember from your Nikki talk, you said, so from the outset, like developers are always proud of what they develop. They always, what someone else does is crappy.
Yeah,
I mean,
shit.
I'm guilty myself in it, certainly. But ultimately, I'm thinking, so what can Bitcoin SV do what nobody else can? And I'm thinking I can run a level 2 on a BTC. So I just need to compress my data a little bit more. You could even argue the Tether token was initially over Bitcoin BTC-alike network, and now it got a bit expensive, and they started to go over other networks. You even got an announcement that Visa accepts Ethereum things, and all of that get promoted by, but wait a minute, we can scale via level 2. That's always the same story. And now we are 2 years in BSV. And when I created the Hive network competition, I ran it on run framework tokens. So every single news node in that network that was connected to other news and so on was a run jigs. And those jigs are exactly the same that people are now selling as NFTs and collect hundreds of thousands. And I'm thinking, I mean, of course you can do that, but should you? So it's an intrinsic value.
But this is where I'm going to kind of stop you and the devs like yourself, Craig included, right? Because firstly, before I say what I'm about to say, I'm very thankful you came on the podcast. And also, I already know that you're someone that I would like to talk to in some more detail. I can tell you're only scratching the surface of what you know, Robin. So that to me really excites me, that there is an opportunity to say, even have chats with you privately, as well as come back on a podcast and we'll talk some more. But with what you're just saying, and you kind of hinted on it a couple of times, you're about to speak on creation, okay? And Craig does this a lot. A lot of people do this, okay? A lot of developers do this. You guys are all bloody guilty of this because you're all freaking smart. You're really smart, right? And then that steps into an ego fire, right? And then you start saying what people should or shouldn't be doing with a technology, right?
There I would start with, I would say, developers are not the smart ones. So there it starts with, like, so of course you can always argue maybe there are intellectual levels, but I would argue once you reach a certain level and you and I would say 90% of the ecosystem is on that level, we all would get it if you just explain it properly. And that you would equally get infuriated, but by what is proposed there. And
I think we just need to take a very binary approach, bro. Like, end of the day, as you know better than most, okay, a computer, zeros and ones. It's really simple, right? But this conversation is happening through a dexterity of zeros and ones, right? So we understand complexity. Supreme complexity can happen from basic principles, right? On, off. And I think we just kind of need to remind ourselves of that. And let's just build what we need to build from a technology standpoint. And let's not create a technocracy to enforce how human beings should utilize the system. Because one thing that I can't determine, and I don't even want to try and determine, is what people are going to create off the back of a technology like an NFT. I'm having such a wide band of conversations from huge corporations where mismanagement of IP is costing them billions a year, to, wouldn't it be cool to say NFT a very famous like child cartoon on the blockchain. And both of those conversations are like really interesting and they're fun. And there are billions of different examples in between. My approach is I just need to be, if someone's going to create value, I'm not the person who's going to determine what is or is not value. Let humanity decide that. But if it does amount value, then you're probably going to want to have a bank for it. So that's my binary approach with what we're doing with Gravity.
I mean, that's exactly true in the end. Why would we stop anyone from creating value, first? Second, why would we put our personal opinions over the value created in this space and then the subsequent economic forces that amplify those values? Like, I'm completely with you there. But since we say, let the market speak, I'm not the one who invented the Stars protocol.
True.
I'm not the one invented the Run protocol, right?
Yeah.
I'm still taking position for one because I can say it does everything it needs to do. It will scale, and it will be the way cheaper solution in the future. Now, as a company, we want to use that protocol, of course, since I think it's way superior. And in the background, you will probably see it in 3-4 months. Like most of the major players also committed already to it, even though they don't state that publicly. So for me, the problem is, if we now get 20 different protocols, now I want to be a service provider, I will need to provide service to all of those protocols, of course.
Yeah.
Then for me as a market participant, I say, okay, wake up, people. There's something going on that you should know. Maybe you should wait 1 more month to decide what protocol wins.
Yeah.
And then we can settle that. And then everyone will maybe 6 months ahead in the BSV space. So when we think about how long times take to build in this space, I would say we weren't necessarily the fastest. So, I mean, maybe that's controversial in the space, but things were slow.
No, I think you're bang on. I think you're absolutely bang on. I also think that's why this next era is, and what you just said, I wholeheartedly resonate with what you just said. And it isn't something that should be rushed into. And also, I don't think it's just going to be one. I think there's going to be at least 2 that's going to get a decent degree of adoption. Run seems to be shooting at the gates right now, but there's still a lot yet to be really, truly looked at underneath the hood to understand what's going on. And I'm aware of what you've described, as well as another one that's quite similar to the approach of what you've described for the reasoning that you described. And I just see the space now. You're going to have these decisions that are now forming, I imagine temporarily, clusters of user bases, right? Because a lot of these services, due to these different, say, protocol implementations, may not be interoperable no more, right? What does that look like to a user? Interoperable is maybe a bit harsh, but there's definitely going to be complications from a user standpoint, and then difficulties from an entrepreneur standpoint as to what to do to find the best middle ground. So how do you see that shake out? In fact, when do you see that really come into the surface? You look on Twitter now, just look between the respective individuals in BSV, myself included, etc. You can definitely see that there's something going on around tokens that's splitting opinions. But from a user standpoint, how do you see this really affecting people, and when?
So what I see right now on Twitter, everyone is using the Run framework. I don't know if you know the controversial parts about the Run framework and how it originated.
I don't actually. I actually don't. If you don't mind sharing with myself and those watching, what you're happy to.
I mean, since you don't know it, I guess most of the community doesn't really know it. So there was first a $5 million tokenized competition. That was ultimately won by Tokenized, but Tokenized might not have been the actual winner of that, but someone else who was a bit smarter but didn't want to give away maybe the intellectual property and didn't want it to say, let's only do BSV. He said, my protocol is smart enough to run on everything. And that guy was Clement Slay, a PhD student from Oxford. And he created the Bitcoin computer. And then he was in Silicon Valley. Spent time with some of the BSV figures, and I don't want to name too much because that goes into quite some depth of controversiality. But ultimately, Brendan Gunning and Clement Slay, they kind of sorted out. Can Brendan maybe take over the CEO position? He's the CTO position. And then after a few weeks of detailing out all the details of the Bitcoin computer protocol, they said, oh, wait, we run our own company now. We don't need you anymore.
Yeah.
Thing was, Clemens issued a patent on it. So that will lead to certainly some controversy in the space too when that lawsuit plays out. So since we in the BSV space are so focused on who created Bitcoin, nobody seems to care anymore who created the actual
extra bits
token project.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
And the fun part is that if you look at Bitcoin computer and you look at Run framework, syntax is almost 100% identical. I can create a run framework token. I can create a Bitcoin computer token. Both work almost exactly the same. That just highlights a bit why I'm also a bit critical of run itself. Because I'm saying, okay, we have level 2, we have level 0. Level 2 is for me run and Bitcoin computer both alike. Like none of them gets any preference from me. If I would implement run, then I would definitely also implement Bitcoin computer just from my fairness perspective of giving them both a fair shot at the game. So we started with what I see currently in the space. I see the run framework. Part of the reason is that Clemens doesn't get any PR. He does not get invited to Coingeek for the obvious reason that he didn't get investment from the main players in the BSV space. And secondly, that he says, okay, it runs best on BSV, but it can also run on Ethereum. It can run on Litecoin. It can run on Bitcoin Cash. You pick your network and it will run for you. That are the reasons that he got a bit sidelined there. And from that aspect, I don't see any issue of promoting a better protocol. In my perspective, over a level 2 protocol that might not even be the original invention, even though many people now go for it because it's easy. But this test token, which is completely unreleased yet, you cannot run it even if you wanted to. But Vaionex will be the first one who do it in probably a month. And a handful of other companies will also do it probably around the same time. Maybe they even get one day earlier or one day later. And that, but then you will see how the space diverges into the level 0s, players and the level 2 ones.
No doubt. So I'm very impressed with you, dude. Like, honestly, I can tell that you are not just an engineer. You're one of the engineers that really gets his hands dirty. How do people find you? What service can they expect to receive from yourself and your team, right? So they come to Vaionex. What's the service? Are you open for business right now? Or are you waiting for your implementation to be done? Or if you are open for business right now, what's your service?
Yeah, we got 7 platforms running. So I consider the whole platform ecosystem that we created like a funnel, where like it starts always with the developers saying, what is this Bitcoin SV? What do I do with it? Can I implement it? Is it any good? Those people I would send to SatoLearn, our learning platform, or to Bitcoin SV developers, which will release probably tomorrow or in 2 days. We are on the finish line with it.
How large is your team?
We have 14 people.
Wow. So 14 developers or
10 developers.
That's very impressive.
We really scaled up the last months after we got our VC investment. We already had 5 platforms out at the time of VC investment. I tried to run it very efficiently. We took less than 16,000 from the original first platform to the 5 platforms plus VC investment. And now we just go 5x in everything we do. So, but to the funnel itself, we have the Bitcoin SV developers where we introduce every single framework, if we like it or not, completely impartial, led by community members, where we have both lists, we have overview pages, we have videos by the Bitcoin Association, we show both SatoLearn and the Bitcoin SV Academy. We want to be as impartial about it as possible to really create a space where I can send someone in good consciousness. Like right now, if I send someone to the Bitcoin SV IO, it's a very nice page. They did a good job on it. But I fear they spent all the money on the initial creation and not on the maintenance. So if you go now on the page, you will see that the Bitcoin Association is not even listing their own Bitcoin SV Academy as a learning resource. And instead, they list nine links to Unwriters, Planaria, and around 7 of them don't work anymore because that's how the space evolves very quickly, right? That's why I said we need to make it this time community moderated. The top heads in the community will add entries. Then you have developers there that are linked to the tools. That way you can have almost a better LinkedIn experience on it. And this time also done very, very professionally. And maybe I can show you behind the curtains in a bit what it will look like in 2 days.
Oh, I'd love to, dude. Like, honestly, I'd love to. And are these developers, are you growing these developers? Are these coming from Cambridge and you're growing them up from ground up to really understand Bitcoin, developing Bitcoin and this new world? Is that part of the puzzle as well?
It started that way. So why I mentioned initially the Metanet Society was people always came to me and said, what can I do with it? I want to implement it. It sounds amazing, but where do I go now? And then I said, okay, go to maybe the Money Button API reference. There you find both the Money Button, which is a very nice wallet, at least at that time. Plus, you find there the whole BSV library documentation, but they had already starts with saying, okay, is this space even professional if they cannot provide proper education on how to get in?
Yeah.
And that was at a time where the Bitcoin SV Academy also didn't exist. So I was trying a lot to bring that into space. After 1 year, I said, okay, now we do it ourselves. We released before the Bitcoin SV Academy. So we are not a copycat, but we are rather the original of it.
That's incredible.
And what we do is we have completely interactive tutorials. You can code on our platform and you directly see what is correct or not. And then you go step by step to create your full wallet. You will go step by step to create transactions, step by step to create smart contracts, tokens, and NFTs. So we really optimize for spending less time to get more insight. That is the beginning of our funnel. Then we have the level 2 platforms that once you know what you're doing, then you can start using maybe MetaShard, which is a direct competitor to Planaria's BTB. What we do completely different is that Planaria scrolls the whole blockchain, 220 gigabytes for some entries when you do a request. What we do is you have an interface and you say, my platform has entries of a certain format. And on the fly, when the entries comes to the chain, to the mempool, we directly fetch it into your shard. So you have your own database. Now, when all your users go over your data, when you have a website, they don't need to refetch that whole 220 gigabytes of data and scroll through it and then get your response. But you only go through 1 megabyte then in the end. That's what you actually needed to have synced with the blockchain.
Yeah.
It's 1,000 times more efficient protocol because like there's one fundamental part that the community is missing, and that is reusing already standardized things in the internet. Like when you look at Unwriter's BTB, quite amazing in the beginning, like query language, and so everything worked. Reason it worked was because it was just simple Oracle, no SQL syntax. So it was not self-written. So many people in the space then said, oh, so amazing. How did you got so many platforms up in such a short time?
Yeah.
Because
plucking stuff off the shelf and then tweaking.
Yeah, it's this transformation of course, there is value and there is real work behind transforming it from what already exists into plugging it into the blockchain space. But then I said, okay, what we have now with Planaria is Google BigQuery. Let's say the blockchain gets around 5 terabytes in maybe 2 years, maybe 1 year. Let's see how quickly that expands. Then you can already look up the pricing list for BigQuery at Google. When you query around 2 gigabytes, you pay around $5 for it. And they don't charge you that much because they think they're so amazing, so they could overcharge you. But that's the actual hardware cost generated to get a result from multiple terabytes in less than 1 second. And then we said, okay, we just go the sharding methodology, where one main database, which is the 220 gigabyte blockchain, gets splitted into many sub compartments. For example, when you now say I have a block, my block is maybe Michael's block 24, then that is maybe your identifier. And now only entries that have this tag pushed to the blockchain will get fetched to your sub database, your shard. And then you can interact with it in a way faster way. It's around 150 milliseconds compared to 750 milliseconds. And it will be scalable. So it doesn't matter for us if it's 20 terabyte blockchain, because we always get in real time what is currently getting into the blockchain.
That's giving me ideas around. In fact, I don't want to say it on camera, but that's kind of like your own black box.
So what we want to build with it is, you can of course do a black box. You can encrypt something, hide it there forever. You can also replace WordPress itself. Right now, 40% of the internet platforms are WordPress platforms, and if you want to have a fast one, you pay approximately $20 for it. Fast one means it actually loads in 200 milliseconds and not in 3-4 seconds. We can offer the same experience, but without the $20 a month. So from the increased efficiency, we as startup can already say we could push it to $4 a month to run our shards, and it will be only the cost to push data now to the change will be maybe 7-8 cents per blog post. When you make that calculation, you're already 5 times more efficient. And we see once we scale, we can go way down in that pricing, that we can say it should cost less than $1 a month to fetch any data. And we even have a free plan where you can have like 25 blog posts or so in your own shard, or whatever other data format you push there. And there are already plenty of developers who integrated that now into their platform, but they're just prototyping it yet, so they're not pushing that out too much. So we are here now on level 2 of the funnel. So the next one is API and Me, which kind of took the idea of Code-Off, because we thought, okay, they won now this hackathon. Why don't they release it? What's going on? Let's give them some competition.
Yeah.
And then it took us 2 weeks to build the whole platform, and it worked. It wasn't the fastest one, but then we said, let's wait till they come up with something better. And then we already have version 2 out there. So version 2 will probably roll out in less than a month from now, and it will be around 30 times faster than version 1, way more efficient. Then the third layer thing that we have here on the level 2 is the block codes, which was the original platform that I described for machine learning, but now it's a platform for Bitcoin codes. Since it was a very high quality platform, I could just reuse much of the content of it, plug it into the Bitcoin SV blockchain to have micropayments in it. Suddenly all the PayPal credit card issues were solved. And now we have one template there that allows you to make a block. Just a normal, like a bit like a WordPress block, very simplified, yet we will extend it over time. We charge for the template $9, and then you own the license right to use that code. You can rewrite it, make a Twitch out of it, whatever you want. Okay. And we save you probably a month of work by using that. And our plans is to have around 20-30 templates that you can buy there as a coder, and it will save you an incredible amount of time. Amazing. And that is already proven in the market by the Envato market. Envato market makes 207 million revenue every year by selling design templates to designers and coders. What a design template is, you get either the HTML code, the React code, the Next.js code. The whole code. You still need to be a programmer, but you don't need to do the designing of every single element. And that's a very efficient process of doing things. And we are thinking, if we actually get to hundreds of millions of platforms, millions of developers, then how do you get those developers on? You need to go to a funnel from either learning it first, or at least get all the resources somewhere bundled. Then you need to have some tool sets, maybe some from us, some from competitors. And then you might also want to have this marketplace that people can buy and sell things there. So everyone can now put something in the code marketplace and charge for it. And says, maybe I created a startup here, it kind of failed, but I think the code is good. So can I not sell it maybe for $10 for everyone who buys my code? Then I might still make $1,000 in the end from it. You know that you added some value to the world, and it's not hidden.
That's incredible. That's incredible. To tie in loop from what we started the conversation with around machine learning, and then your statement that human beings do it a lot better. We threw this query out to the crowd through Twitter on a guest recommendation, and your name came through. And I can completely understand why. And thank you, crowd. I trust the crowd and I trust Twitter, because this has been a great education. Robin. This has been a great education, and I would love to connect you with David, our CTO here, as well. And I'd love to come and have a little look under your hood as to like what tech you guys are building.
So that is to our product part. So we also have Raspberry, the initial Hive protocol. But then we also got the second part, consulting and kind of workshops and so on. And that is actually the profit-making part at the end that puts us as at least at cash equal. And I don't think many companies in the whole space are cash equal. Now, of course, my VCs will say, why the hell are you cash equal? We just gave you quite a lot of money. But then I think it's kind of this growing part of every company, also growing for me as someone leading a company. I know I can lead a team with 7 people very efficiently. Now I have to learn how to lead a team with 16 people efficiently. And then I learn it for 30 people, so that you can always expand very quickly and then completely fail. I don't want to name any competitors in the space, but we saw some big failures. There. So to the consulting space, we are currently building wallets for third parties. I think we will soon be the strongest competitor in the wallet as a service infrastructure part. Okay. Right now, Handcash is probably leading by having Handcash Connect. We want to kind of one-up the whole thing. They will likely one-up it too, since they have enough money too to do it. But then this real race for value starts. So it's not like we are saying we are necessarily better from day one. I trust that we will be, but it's still a building process.
You're very turned on by the intellectual aspect of all of this, aren't you? You really like that aspect, like.
So I'm really into the competitive aspect.
Yeah, like they're just building, and I can tell it's coming from a healthy place as well. You just want to build shit that's better, right? And that's healthy. Everyone should take that approach, and then the end user gets all the rewards. But I can tell as you're speaking, it's like you're like you get a little glint in your eye when you're talking about building stuff that's better than what is out there, and that's not an egotistical thing. I can tell that's a very passion-driven thing.
Yeah, probably this competition for value thing. So when I hear companies saying, "Oh, we have this amazing API now, we only charge you $600 a month," and then I was thinking, okay, you might not have any competition yet. Maybe you should change that if it generates anything. And then ultimately we get a fair API that costs you maybe $5 a month to do some blockchain analysis. Like that was an example that I got from the last Coingeek. We wanted to have this blockchain analysis API to say, does it come from laundered money or not? And then they come up with this completely utopian values. And I always think, okay, maybe that is a completely immature space yet, and we need to do something about it. Same we might see with the valid developers. So our clients certainly also ask other clients to do their jobs for them. And what they want to have for the same service is around tenfold. Of course, we could have said we go eightfold, and we might or might not have gotten the job. Their reputation is maybe a bit better than ours right now because they got a bit more experience in the space. We are pretty young. But I'm saying we want to build something that we charge for based on the value we provide, which is competitive to what the rest of the world would charge if they all would know about Bitcoin SV.
That's powerful.
And that's the level we need to get to.
That's powerful. That's noble and very, very powerful.
Well, the question is it really noble? It's kind of an opportunity if we can then sell 10 times more gigs, create 10 times more platforms for third parties, then we make the same amount of money at some point. But at the same time, we grow the whole ecosystem. And since we are an infrastructure provider, we are profiting anyways from a bit of space in that sense. Then the second thing we do is kind of with workshops, we reach out to universities and teach master classes how to do things. And I think there we are almost collaborators.
Is that UK based?
So I hope I'm not giving away your own company secrets, but I heard that you want to be involved with the University of Exeter.
I love him. I always have a great time where we're speaking to the class.
We are now partners of the University of Exeter.
Nice.
And we set it up all in a way that we say, okay, we teach our students how to actually code on Bitcoin. You learn it in 3 or 4 days. We really condense it down. We partnered with Script too, with Shawi. He will be our smart contract instructor in those workshops.
Amazing.
So we educate the students, and then they need to do their master's thesis projects, develop something, and that's where you come into place as a mature company. You say, okay, you can build kind of all kinds of applications around our SDK, so what we did. Our job as Vaionex is just getting them there. And then you take them over and inspire them with something that could actually create to make the world a better place.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome, dude. Well, I guess like we've got some collaborative stuff coming up together as well then, because Exeter University I see being a great hub for all things SV, and they've got a great set of students who have very independent minds. They're not just going to lap it up just for the sake of like lapping it up. They have some great fucking questions. They're not silly. I really, really like the group. Really, really like the group.
No, we had, quite a lot of topics about what I do, what Vaionex does. Let's talk a bit about what you do. That's
go on, go for it. Ask me a question. You've got about 5 minutes to get a good response out of me. Go for it. What would you like to know?
I would start with what the hell is going on with your Coingeek presentations?
What's you got to narrow that down. Strip that down. So
let me start with your product. I mean, you have a very clean product, very minimalistic. I like it. It kind of binds the banking system with your wallet system. Very smart move too.
Yeah.
You got the right investment now with the crowdfunding. I think you raised how much? 800,000?
1.1. Was raising 500,000 and it ended up being overfunded to 1.1.
Yeah. You got all the opportunity in the space right now. And then I see Michael Hudson standing in Coingeek London last year, telling 10 minutes about the special insights.
Squares and circles.
Yeah. And I was thinking, okay, you had now 10 minutes to convince the whole community that you have the best wallet out there. So you're the best of both worlds. And you decided not to.
Yeah.
What happened?
So when you go and you speak, if for me and you speaking right now, right? Right now, because we're focused on the fact that me and you are in conversation, if the cameras are not on, we just got to focus on you and I in conversation. Switch the cameras on. Now there's other people watching, and now I'm speaking to the internet, right? There's cameras at Coingeek. When I step on stage, people assume I'm just there for them. I'm not, right? I'm there because this message is going to be delivered and it's going to be immortalized by the internet. So it's a timeless message. I'm not just speaking to the immediacy of the room's requirements, right? I'm speaking and I've got a bigger reason as to what I'm speaking on and why I'm speaking on certain things.
So a cynicist would say you're trolling the people in the short term and you have a long-term message behind.
Yeah, call me a troll. I'm happy to be called a troll. But the core message that I'm trying to deliver is it's not just the immediate, what you see that steers all of this, right? You kind of even touched on it yourself. You said that machine learning, having a human be part of that equation improves it, right? That's kind of what I mean when it comes to the square and the circle, right? I factored in the people focus on the immediacy, the body, which is the square, has a beginning, it has an end, right? The circle represents spirit, right? Something that is non-physical, something that is not seen, but we know it's there. And it's the driver of the square, right? It's the torque that twists matter. It is the wave that predates the particle, the thought that sparked life into existence.
And there I would interrupt you and say,
go for it.
Those are exactly those words that sound amazing, but mean absolutely nothing. I think from a cleanliness perspective, you have an amazing product. Why not have a super clear message? Because the actual problem is that, so let's face it, we as BSV ecosystem, we are not very popular. And it's not that we didn't have good apps that we have no users. It's that...
Oh, no. It's not just that. We've got a branding issue, okay? And I'm someone who has broken out of that branding issue, right? It's difficult. It's like very thick sludge and glue with the SV and the branding issues around SV. this as a platform, myself as an individual and as a symbol, has been to step away from that narrative and try and break into new paradigms, new narratives, new industries. Right?
Exactly. And that's the smart way to do it, because you need to detach yourself from the Bitcoin SV brand.
Also on that though, I've been in this space a long time. And I've been in this space predominantly as someone who offers education, right? So how does one still stay relevant while also keeping secret what I'm really truly building? Because now's not really the time for me to be telling everyone what I'm really actually building, but I'm getting invited to speak here, speak there. I love speaking. I love being an educator, right? So Mike needs to go on stage and Mike needs to drop some shit without telling everyone my shit, right? But I also want people to be inspired and curious about this technology. And when I stand on stage, it's not a Mike show. It's not even a Gravity show. It's a you show. Why does this technology touch you as a human being? That's what my role is. I want to introduce the human aspects. I want people to think about what it means to be human and how being human becomes better because there's people like you out there, engineers who are building shit that's going to impact how someone interacts with their own grandparent, right?
Yeah.
So when I go on stage, I speak on certain things. Yeah, I can tease, I can troll on things. I can even tease and troll also, to be honest with you, quite frankly, mathematics in terms of Bitcoin are the things that really inspired me and also got me, ironically, looking at Craig very differently for two reasons. One is I think this guy Satoshi, because of what it is that I'm seeing, he's the only person who can articulate some of the questions that I had around the mathematics, but also through that articulation, I was like, you weren't the guy that done the mathematics. Right.
So I asked him too about that interview, by the way. So we were sitting at dinner in Cambridge, and then I asked him what went on this week with Michael and the number questions. I don't remember his answer though. But it was
I can't imagine it being positive. Craig is a man of Edison by his own volition. I'm a man of Tesla. I think Edison's the fraud. He thinks Tesla's a fraud. That's fine, right? But David Rees, I think, had a huge influence in the mathematical model of Bitcoin, right? And I think Craig is still understanding and unpackaging a lot of that. I think when you're doing division, right? It's not even division's multiplication. Bitcoin's a perfect example of that. You're dividing the block rewards, but you're getting more coins in distribution, right? But you have a problem in computing zero. Like in traditional mathematics and the way it's taught, there's a problem in computing zero. I think this is also influenced and affected like Craig's understanding of what he's building in with Bitcoin. Also why there's not really 21 million coins, it's just underneath 21 million coins. And I'm going on stage and I'm introduced Timechain concept. That's on the Shem channel. I was the person who first started speaking about this. No one was speaking about this, right? I started referencing as a time chain. Right. And I said that there's this mathematics that's going on inside Bitcoin that's important. People need to start paying attention to it. Right. And that's why I started to tease. I started to throw things out there. I even remember having a conversation with Jimmy. I had a conversation with Calvin. I even printed out a torus with a little bit of a puzzle saying there's no way in hell that what I'm saying is bullshit. And when I had that interview with Craig on the podcast, I would say, okay, 3, 6, and 9 is completely baked in. Tell me I'm wrong. And this is actually a challenge to anyone in the space, including Craig. Prove to me I'm wrong, that this hasn't been inspired by, ironically, Tesla's mathematics and Tesla's understanding of 3, 6, and 9. It's either it isn't known and therefore he had very little involvement in the mathematics, or maybe just doesn't see it from that angle, but it's undeniable that it's there. And I've printed it off. I've given that print out to Jimmy. I've given it to Calvin. I told Calvin to go give it to Craig. But the great thing is, and now taking words out of Craig's own mouth as to how he applies and goes about what he's doing. If people think it's bullshit, it's good. As long as I'm building something with it.
Let me say something about that. Let's assume you're right, or let's assume you're wrong. How does it matter to the world that we built an efficient, low friction economy in the whole world? I think we have here a real opportunity to create something completely groundbreaking. Can we really spend our time now to discuss those things? Or do we actually say, all the people in the space, get your stuff together? You wasted now 2 years. Either we do it now or we do it never.
The only thing that matters is experience. The only thing that matters is experience. It's not what people say. It's not what words are. It's not coming soon. It's experience, right? So we just got to build shit. We got to deliver it. And we need to stop comparing penises.
Yeah.
That's what we need to do.
Because ultimately, there can be 10 companies who do exactly the same. If we had 1 billion people, it wouldn't matter. Each of those companies would be $1 billion company. There's basically no competition between the company in a real sense. So right now, we're always fighting, give me your Handcash handle, give me your Relay X handle, give me your money button, Paymail. And so I think we are way too much focused on the small things. And I think the moment that Bitcoin SV gets big, then we get all the Ethereum developer infrastructure swapping into the BSV space. So we'll just change a little part of the backend, and then exactly that same interface will work for BSV.
I mean, in summary, this is the way it is that I see it, right? We are now at the stage, because of NFTs, that people are very fixated into house, right? They can see now it's mainstream, which means I drive down the street and I can see all of these houses built on crypto. Great, amazing, it's a house. If I go and view a house, I want to view the kitchen, I want to view the bedroom, I want to view the garden, balcony, etc. I never ask the letting agent or the property agent what is the make and dimensions of my plumbing. I don't, right? Only time I care about my plumbing is if I go to the toilet, I take a shit and it doesn't go anywhere. Then there's a problem because now my house stinks of shit. That's what happens with Ethereum. That's what happens with these other projects, right?
The same analogy with houses. You can build a house and slightly get it wrong with the concrete pouring in the beginning. And then you realize it only afterwards. And then you realize your whole house basically needs a rebuild.
Yeah. But on that, it's like, you could take that ownership on yourself, right? As a business owner, entrepreneur. But most of us, and the entrepreneurs that we're going to talk about really going mainstream, right? Where we have this world that you've been describing in the last hour, where you don't need to be, say, hyper under the hood like you are, because you went under the hood to deliver it. So these people didn't need to go under the hood, right? So to those people, they just want a house. To speak about plumbing, which is what we're all doing and have been doing for 12 years, to that level of entrepreneur who just wants to build something and get it out there, it's irrelevant. And the only time it becomes relevant is when they take a shit and it can't flush, or it costs them a fortune to flush it, right? And that's where BSV is going to excel, because no one's going to be picking up the phone to ultimately their plumber. And I think that's where we're entering now. I think that's the only thing that's going to matter, which means even BSV as a brand itself, we have to be humble in the sense that it's just fucking plumbing. And we're now at a stage where it's houses that are going to bring the mainstream in. And when they do come in, they're staying because everything just works.
Yeah.
And it will always work, which is the promise and pledge.
Let's talk a bit about the future of BSV. I don't know if we have enough time, but if not, we should make that time, because we should either cut other parts out.
We'll make this the last question each. So yeah, go on. I guess because you started, you can ask me the future of BSV. Where are you going with that? What do you want to know?
So what I see right now happening is we start seeing Bitcoin more as a protocol and less as a coin. When we start doing that, we start with 0 fee transactions, and we start with having level 0 tokens that hold fiat currencies. Once you have such a system, you can have legally and compliant issued fiat money, especially from the Switzerland jurisdiction, where you are allowed to tokenize your Swiss francs and even dollars. And what we become then as an ecosystem is more like a money transmitter system, tokenized money. It's transferred in Bitcoin UTXOs, but nobody is using the Bitcoin then anymore. Now there's 2 worlds we might go into. Either we say we use the Bitcoin as the negotiation path, like we send something to the mempool, we attach a Bitcoin SV fee to it, and then that fee stabilizes the whole system, and we get a fee from the mempool. And then we get a fee from the mempool. And then we get a fee from the mempool. And then we get a fee from the mempool. And then we get a fee from the mempool. And then we get a fee from the mempool. And then we get a fee from the mempool. And then we get a fee from the mempool. And then we get a fee from the mempool. And then we get a fee from the mempool. And then we get a fee from the mempool. And then we get a fee from the mempool. And then we get a fee from the mempool. And then we get a fee from the mempool. And then we get a fee from the mempool. And then we get a fee from the mempool. And then we get a fee from the mempool. And then we get a fee from the mempool. And then we get a fee from the mempool. And then we get a fee from the mempool. And then we get a fee from the mempool. And then we get a fee from the mempool. And then we get a fee from the mempool. And then we get a fee from the mempool. And then we get a fee from the mempool. And then we get a fee from the mempool. And then we get a fee from the mempool. And then we get a fee from the mempool. And then we amplifies the infrastructure. And then we scale to becoming exactly what the Visa network right now is, but just way more efficient. And then instead of just having dollars, we can also run tokens and gift cards, everything on it over the chain, but nobody will see the BSV anymore in it. And I think that's the biggest opportunity we have now. After we kind of wasted a big opportunity the last 2 years, we have now maybe a second opportunity to.
What do you mean by that? You've said that a couple of times. Wasted the big opportunity in the last 2 years. What's the big one? What's the big one that we missed?
What we did is we played the antagonistic game. We very clearly said we don't want to have anything to do with anyone else in the space because we are regulatory compliant and you're not. And you will go down for it. And then we said, oh, we can't do it because we have the stronger cards at play. So we risk being delisted from a Kraken or a Binance because we were so sure that we would win, because when you're antagonistic and you win, then it's a bigger win in the end. But we made that bet based on that the Craig Wright lawsuit would end a bit earlier, that there was no Corona. That is probably the biggest loss for us as community, that Corona happened. Because when you look at the statistics, the startup creation rate dropped by 70%. And we as a space said, because we were so sure about ourselves, that we don't want to have any investors, we want to have builders. And when the startup rate declines by 70%, suddenly you don't have builders anymore. That's how we got kind of stuck in narrative. Partially because Corona came, people felt insecure. They wanted to have something to invest in that, might at least not end in a hyperinflation. If that ever happens or not, doesn't matter. It's more the perception of what people had at that time. They saw a raise in coin prices. Then they saw the opportunity. Why can I not create my own DeFi thing, my own NFTs? All of those are basically fractional reserve systems that ultimately all crashed down sooner or later, but at the moment they still work. So we kind of went to this path of history that was completely the opposite of what we expected it to be. And that's why the whole antagonistic play didn't turn out well. And now we need to find a way to recover from that by going a new route and way. I don't think throwing money at startups will make any change, because the users are not leaving because the apps are not amazing. They're just not there because we didn't channel enough users into the ecosystem in the first place to even get this self-amplifying process that Ethereum had over years in state. And that's why I would say you as wallet provider, you might in some years not recognize yourself what you were in the first place. Suddenly you become like a traditional bank because you have all those fiat tokens in your bank. You will have smart contracts that can interact with those fiat tokens. You can make super complex system, everything that Bitcoin promised, but you don't know anything about BSV anymore. Or you say, the second future is that we say BSV stays relevant because it's this one common unit that every miner can agree on accepting, and you can still use it as part of the fee system. And people then start, because it's used so much, to say, okay, this BSV might have a value because some people need to spend it in fees. Some people need to lock up Satoshis and smart contracts to create those tokens in the first place. Those are the two pathways to go. And as a community, we still need to see which way we want to go.
No, there's no doubt, dude. I don't disagree with that at all. I think we are in the era of the entrepreneur. It's not plumber time anymore. We've done a lot of the work there, the efforts of N-Chain, the like, in order to secure lockdown, the plumbing aspect. I think it's now on individuals out there, such as yourself and all the other entrepreneurs in the space, to now build solutions that allow either other entrepreneurs to build solutions or just the direct solutions for the end user, period, and start allowing the human condition to be now touched because this technology exists. I think the biggest thing for me when it comes to what does humanity look like, what does the future look like, aware of the mirror. And that's how I see Bitcoin. I see Bitcoin as a mirror. You can do bad, The world will see you do good. The world will see you. And I believe the world will favor those who are doing good and who are known to be doing good. Simple example, supply chain management. If I scan an item at a supermarket, I know it's come from good sources, right? And that is going to start changing and pushing forward the human condition, how we interact with one another, and what we deem to be truly valuable or not valuable. That's actually the thing that I really do like about this whole NFT stuff, beyond the nerdy shit. It's what's this going to mean at a very simple, traditional human experience level.
And what are your considerations regarding, so we had always political systems that might sometimes turn out well, sometimes not so well. When you look at Karl Marx, he had also good intentions, but ultimately his ideas probably killed millions of people. I can see in BSV the same if we do it wrong. I see systems where, since you record everything on chain, you have all the interactions constantly happening. Then you can have a system where money becomes omnipresent and punishment for not fulfilling certain things becomes omnipresent too. The good version of it would be that we forget about most monetary interactions. Money will just flow from our wallets away and we don't even recognize. We look every few days and say, okay, it got a bit more. I got 1 million microtransactions now, and you don't need to care about it anymore. Where do you see that system going?
Well, when you say punishment, right, or things to be expected of, okay, having this well-lubricated system that energy just flows based on the right pricing of that energy, 100%, I see that world, right? But I guess it creating some minority report scenario where I'm in trouble before I'm really truly in trouble.
It's not necessarily that. So punishment you can understand as the lack of giving you something. Let's say I increased now the supermarket prices by 500%, but I didn't increase your salary. Did you really got punished? Some would argue, no, I'm paying you the same. But at the same time, from a societal perspective in macroeconomics, now you suddenly have less because you didn't keep up.
I agree with that. But the influence then now becomes, if I throw the question back your way, does this technology touch governments, right? Does it touch our democratic systems? Is voting going to be on the blockchain? Do you see that world happening, and in what time frame? Because based on that, then we'll have the bigger indications as to how this affects, again, what I'm saying, say your average human being on the street. Because if we talk about, okay, a real fair system, and then say a democratic process being human beings electing an individual to be the greatest example of the individual that they claim to govern. And once empowered into that position, then we can assess the polarity, the shadows and the light. And if there's too many shadows going on, then we got the right to vote that person out because we have complete sight at that point of the system because it's integrated with the chain. That world, I believe we have a very positive future because it's been managed in this way, right? If you remove that aspect, which let's be realistic, that's probably one of the last dominoes to fall, right? If you remove that aspect and we've got all this automation and other sides, will things still be effectively disbalanced? Yeah, they're going to be getting better because of competition, and competition brings attention to governments in order for them to start kind of acting better, etc. It's going to be an evolving thing. But if it's like, let's flick a switch, what would society look like if everything's on basically chain? I don't think, firstly, we have true capital. I think we'll have the first shot of real capitalism, right? I love the notion of capitalism, but I mean real capitalism. I can't say that I live in a true, fair, transparent, and truthful version of capitalism today.
Especially not in Corona times right now, right?
Exactly. But that's the experiment. It is the experiment. All of this is an experiment. Gravity is an experiment.
Exactly.
It's an experiment.
And there are things the community also needs to make, maybe small changes in narratives. We need to call it an experiment.
Yeah.
Like we have so many people saying this one will completely make the world better.
Yeah.
it might also make the world a lot worse. And that's why we are here, to make sure it doesn't happen, right?
And everyone's got a role. I do like the term experiment, because like, everyone has a role in that. And it's not, the success of it isn't on me or you. And clearly not even Craig. It's all of us collectively. And we've got to work out this stuff collectively. And we do have historically good ways of navigating through those types of paths, which capitalism, which is competition. Just build shit, build it better, keep on building it better, keep on marketing it better, keep on getting it out there, keep on promoting the benefits it means to the audience it is that you're trying to target, right? And then hopefully you're heard, and then we start changing things and moving things forward. And
there I see the great potential for gravity, that like you have the right mind where to go. You have I would say you have the right style to do it. Now it's time for all of us to do it, I guess.
Well, we definitely need to have an off-chain chat. We definitely need to have an off-chain chat. But brother, again, I really appreciate you coming on and saving our ass and flying in last minute and doing this podcast. It's been amazing. I would love to have a part 2 of this. I imagine people in the comment section are going to demand a part 2. But we definitely need to have a conversation privately as well, Robin. And yeah, dude, Godspeed. Just keep on doing what it is that you're doing. I'd love to know a little bit more about your team too. And just one last time, so people could find you who are new to us and just new to the space overall, in order to get in contact with you, Robin, what's the best way to do so?
I would say Vaionex.com is the main page that you find all of our team. Like, our team is half IBM members, half Cambridge, Cornell. You'll find our products, and you can always reach us if you have any problems with our products.
No, we're always Twitter handle?
RobGCC. I needed to shorten my name a bit, not to get too much hate to my supervisor for being part of BSV. So I decided early on, let's use a rather cryptic name.
No, I just got to own it and embrace it, man. I just got to brush it off every now and again on YBSV.
I mean, now we are probably fine, so nobody cares about us anymore.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Rob, absolutely appreciate you, brother. Thank you again for coming on. And that is another episode in the Bitstocks podcast bank, and it's always in traditional fashion. In fact, I never say this. If you do like this video, like it, comment, and share. See, I done it. I done the shout outs. But as always, peace, love, and light, everyone. All the best. Take care.
Bye.